So I'll call the East Lyme Board of Selectmen meeting to order. Today is June 1st, 2016. If you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additional agenda or consent items this evening? I don't believe so. So delegations, anyone wishing to speak to the commission? By the way, we're part of our agenda tonight before we do the delegations is a new interlocal agreement by the town of East Lyme and the town of Waterford for animal control services. We will reserve time during that period of time for public comment specifically on the animal control. It's not a public hearing, but the state statutes do allow for public comment. Did I get that right, Attorney Collins? O'Connell, I almost called you. Oh my goodness. You look nothing like him. So I'll move to delegation. So we should probably keep, although you're welcome to speak to anything on, but you may want to reserve speaking on the animal control for when we get to that point. That would be more appropriate. Anyone like to speak? Yes, sir. We usually reserve public delegations. We have a rule in this commission, 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, well, they're willing to allow me to speak.
5 minutes, sir. That's what you get.
Well, I'll give them my 5 minutes as well.
We don't do that. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes.
Okay. My name is Philip Russell. I'm first of all, I want to preface this by saying that we had an informal meeting with Mark Nickerson. Kind
That's
of
me.
informal, right after the last board meeting here. And he said if we had a plan or if we had something to talk about, that he had no problem with us coming forward with that. And that's what we're planning on doing today. So thank you for this opportunity to allow us to present our viewpoints. Before you is a PowerPoint that highlights what we are about to present. Many people have contributed to this viewpoint, and this is a summary of our collective thoughts. Okay, the first page. Going to the second page. The original Board of Education.
Excuse me, sir, just so you know, and I won't take this into your 5 minutes, we don't make the decision on the Board of Ed school plan.
This is more about town than it does about.
But we have no jurisdiction over this at all. We have zero power to present this.
As long as I'm not ticking off the time.
I know.
No, we'll start that again, but I just want you to know that it's really inappropriate that you bring it to this commission. So you know.
We think it's appropriate.
Okay.
The original Board of Education plan, the second page, talks about a plan that talks about $58 million of improvements to schools. The original plan was renovate Niantic Center and also build an addition and also build a new Flanders school. That total was $58 million. The new plan totals $67 million. And that's $34 million to renovate Lily B. Haynes and build a new Flanders school, so $67 million. The savings to the town for the original plan was $8.3 million. Now, if you sold Niantic Center School, and I doubt if you'd ever get more than $2 million, you'd probably get less based on some of the going prices. The net savings to the town would be about $66,300,000 that you would save if you went with the original plan. Now, if Niantic Center was sold and you actually developed it, and you got maybe the same amount of taxes that you get from Flanders Plaza, which has a whole bunch of markets and all that stuff, they pay taxes of $108,000. If you divide that by the $6 million that you're going to spend extra, then the taxes you would get by selling the building, and it would take 63 years to break even, okay? And that's about 108,000. Actually, it would be, I'm sorry, it would be 58 years before you would recoup that money. The above, and please, the above amounts are based on the net monies that the town will get or spend. Okay? The comparison of the two schools, closing Niantic Center School, it was stated that it was about $820,000. Now, first of all, I've closed about 8 schools. I didn't tell you, but I've been a business manager for 29 years, and I was the finance director of the town of Guilford, for 6 years. In my career, we closed 8 schools. And there's no way that we save that much money. I started out projecting we were gonna save $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, but it's really more like $300,000 to $500,000, depending on what you do, whether you're consolidating and things like that. Again, and the reason why, on the bottom of that slide, the larger building, the Lily B. Haynes, is twice as big as Niantic Center. So yes, you'll still save a principal, and you'll save a nurse, and you'll save some secretaries, and you'll save some custodians. But your maintenance supplies, your cleaning supplies, your oil, electricity is all gonna be a lot more savings by closing Lily B. Haynes. The next slide, and this is a very important slide to talk about. What is the town left with, okay? The original Board of Ed's plan was really well thought out, and I really highly praise the work they did. The original plan builds one new Flanders school, and that'll have a life expectancy of probably 80 years, which will go into the 22nd century, okay? And you'll have one renovated section of Niantic Center School, which will have an expected life extension of 20 years to 2040. And you'll have one section of NCS, one renovated, and you'll have a new section of NCS which will go to the 22nd century. Or put another way, you'll have 123,000 square feet of building assets with an expected life of 80 years versus 50,000 square feet of expected life of 20 years. That means you're gonna have over 70% of your new schools are gonna go into the next century. Now, the new plan says one new school in Flanders School, which is 80 years, which will go to the next century. And you'll have one renovated Haynes School with an expected extension of life of 20 years, which will go to 2040. Or put another way, you'll have less than 50% of your assets, your town assets, will be ready for the next century. More than 50% will be expected to be extended for another 20 years. Haynes will be 90 years old in 2047. 90 years old. So, the next slide talks about as a group of concerned citizens, and we thank you for allowing us to do this, because, you know, we've been going to all these meetings, and we just want to be heard. Your decision is going to have, I believe in closing a school. It doesn't make sense not to close the biggest school. But if you go to the next slide, this is our modified plan. Scale down the Niantic Center School project to $20 million. Right now, it's $25 million net to the town. There's a lot of things in there that you could engineer out, okay? I know this because in my business, when we had a new school come on the board, we would say to the architect, we can't afford that, take it $5 million less, and they made it work. They can make it work, okay? Scale down Niantic Center School, Board of Finance would love that, to $20 million. Scale down the Flanders School building project to $26 million, okay? Close Haynes School, keep the large gym, the small gym, the cafeteria, the adjacent offices and storage for use by Park and Rec, okay? Tear down the remaining building and convert the entire grounds to the Haynes Sports Complex. Now, if you look at the next slide, you'll see this is the architect's rendering of Lily B. Haynes. There's not much to say about that until you go to the next slide. The next slide is our proposal, what would happen if we tore down most of Lily B. Haynes, as follows. One, you would be saving 34,438 square feet to maintain both gyms, which is something people don't want to lose a gym. You would lose a gym no matter what you did unless you kept one the gyms at Lily B. Haynes. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you give the copy to the superintendent? So you see the white area there. That would be the both gyms, areas for the Park and Rec Department, and an entire sports complex all around the Lily B. Haynes grounds. The cafeteria, kitchen, and storage would also be saved for meetings, award ceremonies, workshops, and for the Board of Ed. Board of Ed never has enough space to do their workshops. I mean, I don't know if it's like ours, but it's like most Boards of Ed. We always need space.
It's been 8 minutes, sorry. It's been, you gotta
Okay,
wrap
I'll
it
make
up.
it fast, but.
Gotta
we're
wrap
very-
it up.
We're very close.
We have a lot of business
Okay.
today.
And it could also be used for shelter during emergencies, okay? If you go to the next slide, this is our representation of what could happen to Lily B. Haynes. Okay, you still have all those grounds. I mean, you still have the remainder of that building at 34,000 square feet. And look at all the different parks and recreation ball fields that you can use. And you can see by the square footages, it works. We put that on a computer and it works. You have approximately 60,000 square feet of parking area for about 120 cars. And you would have, of course, the overflow at the community center. What I did here on the next slide is I took the bonding schedule. I took from page 24 of your official schedule, your official statement. So the first 4 columns of that is exactly what you're paying in bonding right now, okay? And you can see that the bonding goes all the way down from $5.6 million all the way down to $2.3 million. What we did is we phased in these projects. Dynamic Center, principal and interest, split into 2 different years. You borrow, first of all, you've got to remember, we scaled this down to 20 million. So you take 10 million and you start the project, you do short-term notes until you actually have to spend that money. You have $10 million spent and you started the project. You finish up the project with your last 10 million, and this is the cost of the bonding with the interest in there, and it's based on 2.5% interest. Now, if you go all the way across on Haynes, you'll see in the 2021 year, I put $5 million in to tear down Haynes, or at least 65% of it, and another $2 million to start developing the athletic fields. Okay? There is the bonding cost for that. And then the last section in 21-22 and 22-23 are the 2 principal and interest payments for Flanders School. Now, if you compare this schedule with the next page, you will see that the modified original plan by the Board of Ed is going to cost, in the next 12 years, $71 million. Look at the next page. This is the proposed plan if you did just Haynes and Flanders 4 or 5 years later. You're going to spend about $78 million. Okay? And I'm almost done.
They have to be. We have some rules we have to keep by, otherwise we gotta let everyone talk.
But please look at these advantages.
For
The
15 minutes.
advantages to the modified
Okay.
original Board of Ed approved plan.
Right.
The plan is in the best interest of the children according to the Board of Ed, as stated previously when they approved that plan. Less cost to the taxpayer. 2 schools of equal size. Both schools have high-quality outdoor play areas. 1.5 schools of the 2 remaining schools are good into the 22nd century. Both schools can accommodate additional enrollment growth. Town enjoys additional sports facilities. The sports community retains use of 4 indoor gyms at the elementary level, 7 town-wide. Park and Rec will be able to use the 2 Haynes gyms during the day. Normally, you can't use school gyms during the day. Haynes gyms, salaries, showers, kitchen will all be available for shelter in case of emergencies. The new NCS gym will be larger and handicapped accessible, and the long-term debt, as you saw, can accommodate it. If you look at the long-term debt of those schedules, and I'm asking you to look at this later, the modified plan that we're talking about stays around 5.6 million throughout the entire next 12 years, except the last 4 years where it goes up to about 6.7. But the plan that's approved now, the new plan, is going to jump right up to 7,750,000.
Mr. Russell, I have to cut you off at this point. It's been 13 minutes. I have to let you go.
Okay.
Please, sir, please be respectful of our rules.
And please read
Thank
the
you.
last.
We will read the rest of it.
The
I
last
appreciate
page.
that.
The last page.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Other public delegations? Yes, ma'am?
Elizabeth Cookter, your East Lyme Town historian, 154 Pennsylvania Avenue, Niagara.
Let's make sure that microphone is right up against, just so we can hear you.
It's
know.
kind of off on him, too.
Yeah.
I hope that all of you had a chance to see the article in yesterday's paper on historic houses in southeastern Connecticut. Last September, a group of volunteers from 6 historic houses in southeastern Connecticut met with representatives of the Southeastern Connecticut Cultural Coalition and the Eastern Regional Tourism District to talk about putting together a brochure featuring all of these houses. And by working together, these houses would benefit from a nice brochure, as well as all tourists to the area would know where all these houses are located. We finished the brochure in April. It was printed in May, just in time for the statewide open house, which is June 11th. And there'll be a launch program for this brochure this Saturday, June 5th, at the Smith Harris Barn from 2 to 4. And the state historian, Walt Woodward, will be here to speak about what makes Connecticut, Connecticut. And East Lyme can be proud that we actually have 3 houses out of the 16 listed in the brochure. I have a copy.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think another one. Great.
Thank you.
Good. Looking forward to seeing you this Sunday. Again, that's Sunday, Smith Harris House from 2 to 4 o'clock. Mr. David Godbout.
Good evening, gentlemen, ladies. I'm here to discuss the town reprimanding a town employee, Bradford Cargill, and providing public records to the public, as the law requires. If you folks can recall, on the evening of 26 April, the Water and Sewer Commission held a special and regular meeting. An item up for discussion for both meetings included a water extension project for the Cardinal Road residents. A draft survey was on the agenda to be discussed to see if the town residents wish to have any modification of that survey. Now, in preparation of that meeting, a Cardinal Road resident requested a copy of the draft survey. This request was to allow the residents an opportunity to prepare for the meeting. Normally, agencies of the town, before their meetings, will provide copies of various documents that are to be discussed on the agenda. However, that's not required under the law. In fact, there was a case decided the day after by the FOIA Commission, case 2015-345, in which a complainant complained that the respondents, the agency that held the meeting, violated the act by failing to make the draft plan that was being discussed available prior to the meeting. And the FOIA Commission has found in paragraph 9 that had he requested to receive or inspect a copy of the draft plan, the respondents would have provided it to him. And previously, the FOIA Commission has also ruled that an agency doesn't have to stop a meeting to provide records, access to records while their meeting is ongoing. It would just disrupt the meeting. So on 22nd of April, a resident just asked for a copy of the draft survey that was going to be the subject matter in 2 meetings to be held, about 1 or 2 business days before the actual meeting taking place, so they could, so the residents could actually prepare for the meeting. And the written request And for a copy of the survey was presented to the town employee, Mr. Bradford Cargill. And Mr. Cargill promptly provided access to those records to the requesting requester. So what Mr. Cargill did was to follow the law, because the law requires that access to public records be prompt. And obviously, if there's a meeting going to be held, that a record is going to be examined during that meeting, promptness would require it to be available before the meeting. However, it's come to the attention of the public, members of the Cardinal Road folks especially, that Mr. Cargill was reprimanded for providing this public record, the draft that was going to be discussed at the meeting, because he didn't follow a procedure in respect to providing records to the public. And also, we heard that a complaint that the public obtained the records before the members of the Water and Sewer Commission did. So, but both of those issues are without merit. To begin with, Section 1-210 of the FOIA Act makes any procedure that would delay or violate the promptness provision of the Act null and void. In addition, the Water Sewer Commission members, they obviously had the records during the meeting, but they were upset that the members of the public got the records before they did. However, any member of the Water and Sewer Commission could have done the same as the requester who asked for those records, and simply asked for the records before the meeting as well, and would have likely received the same records that the requester did. So they could file their own FOIA request as well. I don't think they need to file a FOIA request. I think all they'd have to do is pick up the phone and say, hey, Mr. Cargill, send me a copy of that draft survey that we're going to discuss in our next meeting, and that would have been no problem. Now, the survey itself was 10 pages, so it would take a little bit longer for residents to actually review such a large document to make recommendations to the agency of the Water and Sewer Commission. So it appears as if the town wishes to create new rules regarding public records and their availability to the members of the public. And Mr. Cargill's reprimand for simply providing public records to the public by town officials is just objectionable to me. So I have an objection to that. So I have all this here. I'm at 4:41. So I will say one other thing. You're trying to limit people to 5 minutes here. However, you don't have rules of conduct.
Yes, we do.
They're not located at the town clerk's office. I have asked, and I haven't received copies of those. So if you have the copies of your rules of conduct, I would ask to be able to inspect them at your earliest convenience, because I have asked for them before from the town clerk, and the town clerk has not been able to provide me with those records. So thank you for your time.
Anyone else that wish to speak to the public delegation? Yes, sir. Come on up. You give your name and you give your address.
My name is Glenn Carlson. I live at 6 Highwood Road, Niantic. I'm here to speak tonight on item E under your new business, which is the resolution for the paving of the Bush Hill neighborhood. This resolution for $720,000 is to pave streets in our neighborhood, which is Bush Hill, Hillwood Road, Stonywood Road, and Stonywood Road has a number of small cul-de-sacs that branch off of it. It's my understanding that these roads were first put in back around 1969, 1970, something in that order. And we've been living there since 1980. And in that time that we've been there, I would say I cannot remember any more than 2 times that the roads have been like oiled and gravelled. And that's all the treatment it's got, other than little patching here and there. And those small patches that the town crews come through and do yearly, they last for a few months and then they just kind of crumble and fall apart. So the streets in our neighborhood are not in good shape. Of course, there's a lot of people using the roads, and I'm not just talking about cars, there's people that are out jogging and walking and kids riding bicycles and everything. And some parts of our neighborhood, particularly my street, Highwood Road, is crumbling and falling apart. The road condition is deplorable. So I'm urging you folks to please keep this in mind, that it's not just a matter of of having nice-looking streets. But it's a matter of public safety, for one, for people that are using the roads, as well as, I don't know. We just really need the good roads. I mean, every spring, the street sweepers come through, and I look to see what happens on a road, and I mean, small chunks of pavement get torn up by the street sweepers. I have a neighbor a few doors away from me that had a knee operation not too long ago. And they are afraid to go out and walk on the street because it's too uneven. And of course, you know, they still haven't fully recovered, so they rely on a cane and things like that. And they, so the street is in that bad a shape. So the bond is for paving the entire neighborhood. I have to admit, in walking around the neighborhood, there are parts that don't honestly look that bad. But if you really start looking closely at a number of places, you can really see where there's a lot of cracks in the road, and for some reason, our street is in the most advanced state. And literally, it's out of condition now where you could reach down and you can, with your hands, and you can rip up chunks of pavement, okay, that are like the size of a paver that you would use in a driveway or a patio. So it's really, really bad. And so I'm asking you folks to please to keep this item in your budget, because myself, as well as I'm sure other people in the neighborhood, have been trying to get this project going, over the past several years, and it's finally now actually part of the budget, and we really have actual funding for it. So we're excited, but we just really urge you not to take it out of the budget, but to please leave it in there. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Ma'am?
Kelly Strike, 20 Brook Road. I have a letter here that I wrote, so I'm going to turn it in, but I wanted to read it for the record.
Okay, just make sure you speak up so we can hear you.
I have a letter here that I wrote, which I'm going to turn in, but I wanted to read it for the record. Regarding the proposal to renovate Lily V. Haynes, which was presented to you all and the other boards on Wednesday, May 25th. And I'm sure you're aware, because we just saw a presentation about the earlier plan to renovate Niantic Center School and rebuild Flanders School. And that was selected and approved by the Board of Education last year. And it was the result of many years of planning. It was an effort by the design committee and the general public, and it represents the best option for the elementary education in town. Now, several factors that resulted in the selection of this plan, as presented in a presentation from the steering committee, include educational quality and experience. Niantic Center School is ranked the 9th elementary school in the state. It's based on data, and I'd like to know, I have a question on that. What will the impact of closing Niantic Center School be on our property values? The site location was another factor. The location of NCS is ideal for a school as it spotlights the excellence of our education system. NCS is embedded in our community, and being highly visible encourages the home-school connection that educators strive to achieve. The location of Niantic Center School also lends itself to walking field trips, getting the kids out and moving in their own community, while creating no additional expenses for transportation. This is actually an added value to the town's investment in Niantic Center School. The locations of Niantic Center and Flanders minimize the length of time that elementary-aged children are riding a bus to and from school. And Niantic Center and Flanders represent our two townships. I mean, that was one of the reasons also to just put into this factor that went into consideration. So the site size was another factor. The play area around Lily B. Haynes is limited. The students at NCS and Flanders have greater opportunity to play football, soccer, things that you stretch out and you run across the fields. They can run about freely. Both schools have large fields, and they also have the opportunity for outdoor PE should the teacher choose to do so. Also, I guess building renovation costs were considered. Operating cost savings were considered. The town's already realized cost savings by deferring maintenance and upgrades on 3 schools, And once renovated and rebuilt, additional cost savings, we know, will be realized because of energy efficiencies. Now, the disposition of the vacated school site was a factor that was considered. And initially, Lily B. Hayes was to be repurposed for use by the town, possibly town offices and a police station. Jeff Newton has stated that the town no longer has use for Lily B. Haynes, but I do beg to differ. Just this past budget cycle, the town had included an item to expand the public library, and the Board of Education is uncertain about where to place coastal connections to save money. It would seem that repurposing Lily B. Haynes to house the youth center and education offices would allow expansion of the library at the community center, relocation of coastal connections to Flanders location, and Learn and Creative Preschool are already committed and using the space and would continue to occupy the space. I think they occupy about half of the building, so there would be just half left to repurpose by the town. Two other factors were long-term considerations and community culture and tradition. So I ask that you consider my comments above as well as below, as I have a few more things to mention. So I'd like to point out that Lily B. Haynes' proposal addresses one school, puts a Band-Aid on Flanders, creates inequity in our education system. Lily B. will host 500 students, while Flanders will host 350. And by the time Lily B. is renovated and Flanders is rebuilt, the total cost is likely to be $25 million more than the NCS Flanders plan. And that only accounts for increased construction costs, not decreased state reimbursement. And as a taxpayer, I find these numbers disturbing. I'm also concerned that within the next 10 years, a new town hall, expansion of the library, and other capital improvement projects will be proposed that could be addressed through repurposing an existing town structure. The proposed Lily B. Haynes renovation is quickly adding up to $20 million over the cost to renovate Niantic Center School. While I appreciate the attempt to acquire the soccer field immediately adjacent to Lily B. Haynes for student recreational use, I believe that Mark Nickerson estimated the cost to install a new soccer field of the same quality at Rydebrook Park at roughly $10 million. So the cost estimate to renovate Niantic Center was determined to be $26 million, and that's already $8 million less than Lily B. Haynes. And now add an additional $10 million, we're getting close to $20 million. And that's the table. And that if there is $20 million available, that's what was thrown out would be the cost to repurpose Lily B. Haynes. So if that $20 million is available after all, then why can't we use it to repurpose Lily B.